Hello, I'm Dr. Nicholas Sutton. I'm Head of Continuing Education at the Oxford Centre for Hindu Studies, obviously in Oxford. And I've been asked to speak relatively briefly, on the subject of Ahimsa, the Indian ethical and philosophical concept of Ahimsa, and how this relates to the environmental crisis the world's facing, and which is going to be discussed, of course, at some considerable length, one hopes, by the political leaders of the world at the COP26 meeting, which starts next month. Ahimsa. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I want to try and discuss the whole idea of Ahimsa, what Ahimsa means, how it relates to Dharma, because we are Go Dharmic as our charitable movement and environmental movement, and look back to some of the early texts which explain exactly what Ahimsa means. Now, I'll start off by saying that in the Mahabharata, one of the great scriptures of India, perhaps one of the greatest scriptures of India, the statement is made, Ahimsa sakalo dharmaha, which means Ahimsa, sakala, is the whole of Dharma, is the complete form of Dharma, Dharma's complete form. Now, the Mahabharata didn't invent the idea of Ahimsa. It wasn't even the Jains and the Buddhists who invented it. It's an incredibly ancient idea. We find it right back in the very earliest of the Upanishads, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Chandogya Upanishad, which, well, nobody knows when they were composed, but Western scholars guess at around 700, 600 BCE. Indian scholars often say much earlier. But the point I'm making is that Ahimsa is an incredibly ancient idea that we find in these very early Upanishads, but it's within the Mahabharata that the idea is fully explored, articulated, and explained, the full ramifications of what Ahimsa actually means. And one statement there, just a brief, pithy statement, Ahimsa sa sakalo dharma. And so because we are Go Dharmic, we are seeking to propagate Dharma. Therefore, on that basis of that statement, we are acting on the basis of Ahimsa also. Dharma and Ahimsa, that's what is being said, are one and the same. And similarly, Krishna says later on, earlier actually in the Mahabharata, when he defines what Dharma is, he says Dharma is whatever is beneficial for all living beings. So we see again, Ahimsa, Dharma are one and the same thing. They are inseparable. Different language, different terms used to express the same idea. So Ahimsa itself, the word, is actually, I don't want to take this in the wrong way, but it's a negative word in the sense that it's negating something. It's ahimsa. Is the way that in Sanskrit other words are negated, forming the opposite. So ahimsa is not himsa, and himsa means not harming, not causing trouble, not causing pain, not causing distress. And in the early texts in the Mahabharata, again, it makes it clear that this isn't just the simple pacifism, perhaps, with which the term became associated with Mahatma Gandhi, of non-violence, objecting to warfare, such as we saw flowering in Britain after World War I. It's not just about pacifism. Of course, pacifism, in a sense, is a part of it, but Ahimsa is much broader than that. For one thing, the texts say, Kurmana manasa gira ahimsa, that ahimsa should be karmana, yes, through your actions, that what you do to other living beings must be never to harm them. But manasa, even in your mind, you must not be thinking malicious thoughts, no thinking of hatred or seeking harm or striving to defeat anything else. Angira, the way you speak, as the Gita says. Speak words that never cause a disturbance to any other living being. Anudvegakara. Speak words that are honest, satya. Speak words that are pleasing, priya. And speak words that are hita, that are beneficial. So all of this is tied in with what ahimsa means. Now, of course, Mahatma Gandhi popularized the term ahimsa in his campaign against the British. What he wanted was that the British should be expelled from India, but the Indian uprising should be based entirely on non-violent means. And by that means, what he meant was taking up arms, not taking up arms, just peaceful objection to the great wickedness of British imperialism. And it worked. It doesn't always. Sometimes they just kill you if you do it. But I think what it means, it's rather narrowed the idea of ahimsa to pacifism, anti-militarism. And in fact, Gandhi didn't mean that even that he didn't mean. He gives an example of a rabid dog comes into the village. If it's left to roam, it will cause distress, illness and death to all the people of the village, the children. What should you do? What is ahimsa? Then you shoot the dog, because otherwise the suffering that is caused is greater. It's not blind pacifism. That's why he says manasa in the verse. You think carefully, use your intelligence, use your integrity to decide, as Krishna says, what is most beneficial to all living beings. What is most beneficial, unfortunately for the dog, is shooting the rabid dog. Now, ahimsa, not harming. As I say, it's a negative of himsa, but does that mean it's just avoidance of actions, of thoughts, of words that cause harm to other beings? That also is a misunderstanding of ahimsa. And when I was teaching years ago moral philosophy at university, and an example was given there which I think is very pertinent to ahimsa. And the example was given was, what about if I've gone out and spent a lot of money and bought a pair of brand new leather trousers? Not that likely to happen, I have to admit. I haven't got the figure for it these days. But some people like to wear the leather trousers. Some politician, I think, spent £800 on a brand new pair of leather trousers. Very nice. But you're walking home in your £800 pair of leather trousers, and you look and there's a lake or a river nearby, and you see that the child is drowning in the lake. He's got just a few seconds to be rescued, perhaps. What do? You think, oh my gosh, I haven't got time to get leather trousers off. They take about 5 minutes to get off, I would imagine, to peel off. Should I jump in and ruin my trousers? I didn't put the child in the river. I haven't caused this drowning. I can just walk on. It's not me that's done it. I've done nothing wrong. And you might think, well, ahimsa, the principle of ahimsa is then sustained because the person hasn't done anything to cause. But the inaction of that person is a breach of ahimsa. So although it's a negative term, that does not mean that it does not include positive action. Ahimsa means there, never mind your trousers. You can get some cheap cotton ones from the Oxfam shop or the good karma gift shop, and you'll forget about it in a bit. Go and do what is right, because ahimsa is doing what is right. Your inaction is a form of himsa, because your inaction, your failure to do the right thing, to bring assistance to some other living being in distress, means that you have breached the principle of non-harming. And that's perhaps a rather petty example. But it's one that applies to the whole world, because out in the whole world today, there are millions, possibly billions of people who are hungry, poor little children who go to bed tonight with their bellies aching with hunger. And we will walk past them wishing to keep our leather trousers intact in the form of all the goods that we own. That's not ahimsa. And I'm not, of course, it's very hard to live perfectly within ahimsa, but that is the point. It's not just the fact that we go to their countries as we did in the imperialist, kill some of them and take away all their stuff. That's clearly a breach of ahimsa. But now if we ignore the plight of the poor, the 10-20% of our population who have to rely on food banks, goodness, what a shame and shameful situation in Britain, or else they don't have enough to eat. And if we just walk by because we want to buy some, I don't know, latest Apple 89 iPhone you've been saving up for, and therefore I can't afford to give you a packet of tea and a can of baked beans, that also breaches ahimsa. Therefore, the Linga Purana, a later text, but still quite early, I've found this verse explaining what ahimsa is. I'll read it in the Sanskrit as well because it sounds quite potent there. Atmavat sarva bhutanam hitayaiva pravartanam ahimsaisha sammakyata yachatma jnana siddhida. This is what ahimsa really is, according to the Purana. Acting towards all other living beings as one would act for oneself, dedicating oneself to their welfare. This is what is said to be ahimsa. And, interestingly, for those who are spiritually inclined, this brings about knowledge of the Atman. So, two things there. It defines ahimsa as acting. It's not inacting, it's not avoiding action, it's not staying on the banks with your trousers and not doing anything. It's acting. Atmavat sarva bhutana pravartanam. Pravartana means movement, doing things, getting out there, taking action. So ahimsa isn't the person who just sits at home and doesn't do any harm to anyone. That's not ahimsa. Ahimsa means getting out, acting. Pravartanam, hitaya, aiva, for the benefit of other living beings. And interestingly, it says not just other people. That will be sarva manusham, manushanam. It says sarva bhutanam, all living beings. A bhuta means to be alive, anything alive, cows, reptiles, ants, tigers, orangutans, monkeys, all species. Ahimsa applies equally, as it says there, sarva bhutanam. Sarva means all. So ahimsa, although grammatically you might say is negative, as the verse from the Linga Purana there makes clear, it also, and the example given of the walking past the drowning child also makes clear, ahimsa means action. So, ahimsa sakalo dharma. Ahimsa is the complete form of dharma. Then your question must be, I hope, because that's what I'm going to talk about. What is dharma? We're called Go Dharmic. What does it mean? Generally, dharma means living in the right way, proper action, living properly, righteous living, doing things the way that they should be done. As I said, Krishna defines it as living in such a way as is beneficial to all living beings. But dharma also has a philosophical meaning, and I think that's particularly significant, the philosophical meaning, because dharma is that quality, that attribute that defines a thing and makes it what it is. And obviously through examples it's better explained. What is the dharma of fire? The dharma of fire is to bring heat, to bring illumination. If it stopped giving heat and illumination, then it ceases to be fire. Water, the dharma of water is wetness, to be wet and to moisten. If water stopped being water, stopped being moist and wetting, it would stop being water. It'd be ice. We say ice anyway. Ice is water. But you see what I mean? It's the defining quality. So Dharma of a human being, humanity's Dharma, is what makes us fully human. And the more we cleave to Dharma, the more we are fully human. The more we reach the fullness of our humanity. Sometimes when somebody's done something wrong, they say, oh, well, it's just human nature to be selfish, greedy, violent and aggressive. Absolutely not. Just the opposite. Humanity in its fullness means to be kind, to be benign, to be giving, to be loving, to be serving. And the more you move away from those animalistic tendencies of selfishness, greed and malice towards the pure qualities, the more one becomes human, because that is what human Dharma is. Don't take my word for it. I'll read. Again, Mahabharata. I just found this verse. I'll read just the English. Never displaying malice towards any living beings through your thoughts, your actions or your words, acts of kindness, giving in charity. This is the universal Dharma, the Sanatana Dharma, followed by righteous persons. Ahimsa, truthfulness, being free of anger, and charity are the 4 practices you must adhere to. This is Dharma. This is Sanatana Dharma. This is universal Dharma. So in these verses, I find one more if I might, because it's one I particularly like. Yes, the wise say that Dharma, what is Dharma? What do the wise say? How do they define Dharma? Well, they say it's whatever is based on love for all living beings. Yes, that word is there. Priyabhupagatam, based on love. Probably some who are familiar with English languages know the word priya. It means love. So love for others and the actions that are derived from love for others, that is Dharma. And of course, we serve our children, we serve our parents, our relatives, our friends, those who are near and dear to us. We do things for them. But here it says, sarvam priyabhupagatam. That same attitude of love, sarva means all the world, that love for the world. And the actions that one performs based on the love for the world, that is Dharma. Ahimsa sakalo dharma, and that is therefore ahimsa, love for everything in the world, the trees, the grass, the sky, the sun, the living beings, the slugs eating my plants, my fig tree, all the beauty and all the ugliness of the natural world, a love for it. That is Dharma. And as I said, philosophically, that is what it means to be fully human. So, having defined ahimsa, perhaps I've gone on a little bit too long, but it's important. The subject was ahimsa and the environment. I think it must be becoming apparent now how it is, why it is that ahimsa is the very essence of our attempts to preserve and protect the environment. This is ahimsa. And so let us ask ourselves then, what is the other side? What is the subhumanity that has the abnegation of humanity that is destroying the environment? And it is the absence of ahimsa, because where ahimsa doesn't pervade the mind and consciousness, so it's not expressed in words and in deed, where ahimsa is absent, there the environment will be destroyed. Krishna says, he explains that. And not all the people who are destroying the environment, they're not just evil people. Arjuna asks a very interesting question in the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, he says, Atakena prayuktiyam papam chariti purushaha anichchanapi varshnaya baladivani yojitaha. Why are people drawn towards such papa? Why are they destroying, knocking down those beautiful trees in the rainforests of Indonesia? Why are they squeezing the beautiful creatures, orangutans and gorillas, into smaller and smaller spaces? Why are they making animals extinct, the beauty of the forest being turned into an ugly mess? And Krishna says, and ichchanapi, Arjuna says, they don't really want to cause that harm. But it's baladivani. It's as if they're forced to do it by some external power. What is that external power that makes even people who are not saints, but by not knowing is evil, what forces do? Krishna answers, Kama Esha, Krodha Esha. It's their desire and it's their anger. He takes the two together. He calls it the all-devouring, wicked enemy of the world. It's this desire. It's this greed. And we see it manifest as the predominating culture of the modern world. It's fed by capitalism. Capitalism as an ideology, capitalism as a culture, means persuading people to constantly increase their levels of purchase, their levels of consumption. You ever watch adverts? I always put the mute on when I'm watching television adverts, but if you ever listen, it's always, enjoy this, get this, you need this, you must have that. There's a new sort of telephone come out, there's a new Mercedes-Benz come out, you have to have it, and that will bring you joy, satisfaction, heaven even. I always show a delightedly happy family. I used to show it when I was a kid. Delightedly happy family, because they were using fairy liquid, washing up liquid. They must have got a lot of pleasure from washing up. But you see what I mean? There's this deceit taking place that if you just buy these goods that are essentially worthless,